Welcome to The Explainer. We often think of history in terms of big battles and famous leaders, but today we're digging into a different kind of story. This is about espionage, about a secret agent whose work was absolutely critical to the survival of a brand new civilization right from the very start.
So picture this. It's the early 7th century. The first Muslim community has just escaped to the city of Medina, and they're locked in this life-or-death struggle with their powerful hometown Mecca. Now, their survival wasn't just about faith or their strength in battle. No, a lot of it came down to a secret source, an asset planted deep, deep inside enemy lines.
The information this agent sent back was literally their lifeline. We're talking about Meccan military plans, their political moves, where their troops were going, everything. This intel consistently kept the Muslims in Medina one step ahead of a much, much stronger enemy. And the craziest part? For years, nobody knew who he was. His identity was a total secret.
Okay, so to really get who this spy was, you first have to understand his family. And this wasn't just any family. They were at the absolute heart of this whole conflict. A family where loyalties were split and the battle lines, they were drawn right through the dinner table.
You see, for the Prophet Muhammad, this whole thing was incredibly personal. His own uncles were completely divided. You had Abu Lahab, who was one of his most vicious, most relentless enemies. But on the other side, you had Muttalib, who protected him since he was a kid, and his uncle Hamza, who became one of Islam's most famous warriors. Talk about a family feud. But then there was Abbas. He was another uncle, super wealthy, smart, a really well-connected merchant who stayed behind in Mecca. And unlike his brothers who picked a side, he just seemed neutral. Nobody really knew where his true loyalties were. It was a total mystery.
So this whole mystery surrounding Abbas, it all comes to a head at the very first major battle between Mecca and Medina, the Battle of Badr. And it's right here that this secret plan, this gambit, starts to unfold, something you could really only understand by looking back.
As the two armies get ready for war, something pretty unbelievable happens. The Prophet's uncle, Abbas, the quiet businessman, isn't just hanging back in Mecca. No, he's actually in the Meccan army, marching out to fight against his own nephew.
But here's where it gets really strange. Right before the battle kicks off, the Prophet gives his soldiers this totally baffling order. He tells them, "Do not harm anyone from my clan, the Banu Hashim." And yeah, that included Abbas, who was literally on the enemy's front line.
Can you imagine the confusion? These soldiers are ready to fight, some of them against their own family members, and now they're being told to go easy on a specific group of guys in the other army? It just doesn't make sense. Why would you protect the very people who are there to kill you?
Well, the answer to that question wouldn't come until after the fighting was over. The result of this one battle was about to bring a massive secret out into the open, and it would change absolutely everything.
And what happened was, against all odds, the much smaller Muslim army actually wins the Battle of Badr. It's a huge victory. And as things wrap up, they take a whole bunch of Meccan fighters as prisoners of war.
And just like he was told, someone made sure to follow the Prophet's order. His uncle, Abbas, wasn't harmed. He was captured, carefully, and brought back alive, right there with all the other prisoners.
Okay, so they're processing the prisoners, and the deal is you have to pay a ransom to get released. Standard procedure. And when the Prophet gets to his uncle Abbas, he tells him the exact same thing. Pay up, just like everyone else, and you're free to go.
And this is the moment. This is when Abbas drops the bombshell, right there in the middle of the prisoner camp. He says, "But I am already a Muslim." He wasn't an enemy at all. He had secretly converted to Islam a while ago.
And suddenly, it all clicks into place. Abbas wasn't a traitor fighting his nephew. He was a deep cover asset. That strange order from the Prophet before the battle, it wasn't favoritism. It was a command to protect his most important source of intelligence, his spy.
But think about this, and this is so clever. Even after revealing his secret to a few people, his cover was still the most important thing. So the Prophet made him pay the ransom anyway, not just for himself, but for his relatives too. This way, he could go back to Mecca and no one would suspect a thing. He'd look like any other loyal Meccan who got captured and paid his way out, ready to keep spying.
Now, eventually the secret did get out. And when it did, Abbas's role completely changed. He went from being this covert agent working in the shadows to a very public, very prominent figure and warrior for the Muslim community. And you can see this years later at the Battle of Hunayn. This was a critical moment. The Muslim army gets ambushed and they just start scattering, running for their lives. It looks like a total disaster. But then the Prophet turns to his uncle, Abbas, who is famous for having this booming, powerful voice. Abbas lets out this one call that just echoes through the whole valley, and it stops the retreating soldiers in their tracks. They turn around, they fight back, and they turn a certain defeat into a legendary win.
I mean, his status grew so much that even the leader of the entire state, the Caliph Umar, showed him incredible respect. There's this amazing story where Omar moves a water pipe on Abbas's roof. Abbas actually files a formal complaint against him. And in court, Abbas explains that the Prophet himself was the one who put that pipe there. As soon as Omar hears this, he not only loses the case, he insists on putting it back himself. And get this, he makes Abbas stand on his shoulders to put the pipe back in the exact same spot. That's the level of respect we're talking about.
But believe it or not, the story of Abbas doesn't end there. Not even close. His name, and more importantly, his family line, would go on to shape world history for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Fast forward about a century after he died. The dynasty in charge, the Umayyads, they're not very popular anymore. So a revolution starts to bubble up, and who's leading it? None other than the direct descendants of Abbas. They end up overthrowing the Umayyads and starting a brand new caliphate, named after him.
So, from their new capital city, Baghdad, the family of this one-time secret agent founded an entire empire, the Abbasid Caliphate. And this empire would oversee one of the most incredible periods of science, culture, and learning in all of world history, what we now call the Islamic Golden Age.
And this wasn't just some brief flash in the pan. The empire his family built lasted for more than 500 years. A direct, powerful legacy that all started with one man operating quietly in the shadows of Mecca. You know, this whole story just leaves you with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? We always talk about the kings, the generals, the people who are front and center, but it makes you wonder, how often are the biggest shifts in history, the moments that define everything, actually driven by the quiet work of people just like this, operating in the shadows?